but like I'll point out three that I think are always critical. One, my kid isn't interested in what's going on here. And we know that this is important because like there's this theory in self-determination research that talks about like intrinsic motivation, the motivation that comes from the inside is the most important motivation to kind of power learning, right? So like when you introduce ideas that kids have no interest in, then it's going to be really difficult to motivate that learning. And we tend to cater to that for white kids, right? But when a Black kid brings it up or a Black parent says it, then for whatever reason, through our racist minds, like we hear that as unvaluable. Right. And so that's where kind of the implicit bias is important. And so part of like trying to get teachers to adopt that is to really try to make sure that they see Black children as human, right? A lot of folks talk about dehumanization and all this other stuff. And through that dehumanization, sometimes I think our words maybe it kind of hits people wrong, but really that's what's going on. When you don't value somebody else's interest as much as another kid's interest, you're dehumanizing one of those people. You're saying that it's not as valuable. The other thing we talk a lot about is racial affirmation. So like you got to show the intellectual contributions of Black people in order for Black kids to want to see themselves in that environment and to feel like they belong, right? So Amber talked earlier about her grandmama being like one of the first taxi cab drivers. That was a Black woman. Like that's probably like laid, and that's why we pay so much attention to that stuff. Like that's why Jackie Robinson is such a big deal. That's why George Washington Carver is such a big deal. That's why so many of these people. That's why Kamala Harris is like a big deal, right? Because now I can see myself in that spot. And then the last thing we talk a lot about is trust. And I always bring up trust because Taylor talked about this a lot earlier. When you can't trust an environment, that is an environment, according to Brene Brown, which a lot of white folks like, and I think she's smart and all this genius and stuff, but she says that you can't love and create in those environments. And I just want you to just sit there and let that sink in, right? Like when you go talk to these teachers and you're telling that teacher that your Black child can't learn because they can't trust that teacher, I want you to say to them, my child can't love in this environment and they can't create in this environment. And if they can't love and they can't create in this environment, then what kind of learning is happening there? Mm-hmm. What I will definitively tell you is that child can't tap into their Black genius as we've talked about it, because in order to be Black genius, that means you got to be able to create new systems of equity and justice. And the first word in there was create. So if you got an environment where kids can't love and they can't create, then to me, that learning environment is worthless.